This week on the My Boat segment, Brad and Steve continue with the ultimate fishing machine.
Most marinas have a pile of used boat accessories off somewhere in a corner, but you have to ask to see them. Here at Sandy Cove Marine, their huge used boater flea market is upstairs. So bring your list of what you need for your boat and plan to spend the day. The advantage to taking the time to search through your local marina's flea market of used boat parts is a huge cost saving over new. And, as you find new things, some creative solutions you may not have thought of come up. And that's just what happened when I found the parts to build our own Livewell. Under the stern casting platform Steve had built, we first designed a support for the Livewell container. And then I installed the Rule aerated recirculating pump by first drilling a hole and using a Dremel tool to enlarge it to fit. Then both the 1100 gallon per minute pump and the aerated outlet were sealed into place with 4200. I used a standard through-hull fitting for the freshwater intake and sealed this to a 90-degree elbow with a little Teflon plumbing tape. Whenever you install hoses below the waterline, either on a Livewell freshwater intake pump or the bilge pump, it's a good idea to use double hose clamps to reduce the possibility of leaks or failure. By the end of the second week, Steve had roughed out a Helm design, again using the door skin as a pattern. The next step was to work out the positioning of the steering wheel and the throttle so that it would clear the face of the helm. And while patterning in 3D often works, sometimes it helps to resort to paper as well. It was important to take the time to get this right, so Steve made a cardboard mock-up of what we'd sketched out. And again, we test fit the helm face and laid out the design of the gauges. By the next morning, Steve had part of the helm cut out of king starboard and had designed and built a covered hatch that would serve as dry storage as well as support for the throttle and shifter cables.
One thing you want to keep in mind is while you're patterning out a cardboard, we're using a 3/4 inch king starboard, so whatever your pattern is on this end, you have to add 3/4 of an inch to cover this piece, because this is only 1/8 inch thick.
The next step was to position the seat base into the floor so that it was centered on the steering wheel and the hole would fall in between the support ribs under the floor. We measured twice and then cut and installed the seat bases with number 10 stainless screws, large washers, and lock nuts. To cut out the gauge holes in the helm, we used an adjustable circle cutter bit set to the size of the cardboard packing template and drilled a test piece. To complete the helm, Steve added a top and a Lexan windshield held in place with thumb screws. The next step was to install the gas tank under what would soon be the forward casting deck. Underfloor tanks must be permanently secured to the hull, so we boxed ours in between the seat and a bulkhead we added, and tied it down to the ribs with self-tapping screws. We then installed approved fuel filler and vent line hose with double hose clamps at both ends, and grounded the fuel line fitting to the hull. With the floor supports installed, Steve took the afternoon to install the carpeting, beginning by making paper patterns of the hull, transferring these to the carpet, and shared a tip about gluing this size of piece into the hull.
Usually when I do a pattern this long, which is 16 feet, when I go to put it in place, I find a place that's lined up with a bulkhead or a wall, and I'll glue a 1-foot section and then work the carpet out 2 ways. So if there is any stretch, you've worked it out over 16 feet rather than starting at one end and being 2 feet too long.
With 2 days remaining to launch day, we then laid in the forward casting platform, complete with a forward seat base and an in-floor access hatch to the anchor locker, and installed a few finishing touches like these rod holders and a built-in tackle box under the bow deck. Well, with the boat finally assembled and the helm in place, the next step in our project is to wire everything up. If you're not familiar with ABYC wiring code, it's best to consult a boat wiring guide to determine the correct gauge of wire you'll need. Critical systems like bilge pumps must fall within a 3% voltage drop across the total wire length, while Livewell pumps could run up to a 10% drop. In addition, there are approved color codes, pink for fuel senders and gray for navigation lights, and it's always best to use marine-approved connectors such as these anchor butt connectors, crimped on with the proper tool and sealed with heat shrink.
Next week, we'll wrap up our ultimate fishing machine project.